the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. And today, great to have David McDonald here. How are you, David?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks for having me on the show. It's great.
Oh, real privilege to have you here. Maybe you can give a quick intro where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Yeah, interesting. So I've been around the tech industry in New Zealand for quite a while now. Did a stint over in Australia and Japan along the way, along my journey. And right now, back in New Zealand, heading up the company Ultrastate machine, which is it's a protocol for what we call non-fungible intelligence. And basically what that means is we're creating a world where the value created by AI flows back to its contributors. So at the moment, there's a handful of people who are the custodians of all AI in the world. And it's one of the most important technologies that humanity has ever invented. And we're creating tools and platform and protocol to allow the people who are contributing to the AI to actually benefit from the value that's created there. So
sounds pretty
mission.
Exciting.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really cool. Well, before we jump in, big thank you to our show partners, Vocus, Vodafone, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. First up, we've got our news bites, just some of the sort of, I guess, interesting news this week. First up, we heard about Russian TV broadcasts and online communications yesterday, which was when Russia was sort of celebrating the end of World War II there, their victory or V-Day. But hackers managed to sort of get in and disrupt Putin's plans a little bit with messages appearing on TV screens, really challenging Putin's propaganda. So it's always interesting to see the way that technology gets used for good and bad in different ways. But I thought that was probably a reasonably good use of some hacking talent there. I see Musk's obviously continuing down this track with Twitter, and I don't know how long that deal will take to close. But yeah, it will be quite fascinating to see how that actually ends up, and looking at some of the regulation that the EU are putting into play, and how maybe that will curtail some of Musk's ambitions. But as latest, I've seen a couple of different things. One suggesting he's hoping to double the number of users for Twitter, and another one sort of talking about 4xing Twitter. So interesting times ahead. And then I talked to somebody from Tesla yesterday who was maybe a little bit concerned that Elon might be taking his eye off more what they might consider more important matters. So we'll see how that plays out. Also in the headlines, reading around first driverless bus trials in Scotland. We keep hearing about autonomous vehicle testing. So that one's going to be an interesting one to follow. BBC and others reporting on that, and then China following in the footsteps of the US by allowing autonomous robo-taxis without a sort of a safety driver on board. A couple of companies there, Baidu and Pony.ai, involved in that one. And the other headline was Rocket Lab. Very pleasing to watch the footage of them having a helicopter catch a falling Electron rocket last week. I thought that was pretty spectacular. It was, I'm sure, a little bit disappointing for them that the pilot felt it was appropriate to release that rocket. But a bit concerned, I think, with how that was flying. The helicopter was flying after catching it, but the fact they've had that success under their belt now, presumably won't be too long before that just becomes the normal way of them capturing and managing to reuse their rockets. And it does seem very sort of Kiwi number 8 wire in a way, but I think this was a concept that had been around before. The idea had certainly been kicked around before Rocket Lab picked it up, but they've done it, and it's pretty phenomenal. And another successful deployment of satellites, 34 satellites last week. So just strength to strength. Now into New Zealand happenings. There's been a bit of tech that's come out and provides capability for detecting diabetes and other diseases. Tech from New Zealand, which is always good to hear about. And of course, New Zealand is a place where we have some pretty major issues with diabetes. 280,000 New Zealanders, and the I guess part of the challenge is being able to catch it early. So this company, THEIA, have been working on it, and they're using this imaging tech that basically takes a good close look at the eye, and then from what they can actually see that's going on with the blood vessels and so on in the eye, they can make a bit of a call from that, and seem to have a very high success rate. Looks like they're using machine learning to be able to recognize the unique differences for those that maybe at some stage of diabetes. Seems like a pretty good use of technology, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. And this kind of you're seeing all this AI machine learning innovation really starting to spring up around us right now, and in interesting places. I think before it was kind of that classic, you watched a sci-fi film from the 80s and you've got this robot talking back to you, and that was the world's idea of AI for a while. But to see it popping up in other places that are super useful and really specialized like that is awesome to see.
Yeah, I was reading there was commentary from Dr. David Squirrel, who's been involved in diabetic testing in New Zealand for 15 years or so, and his comment was that the accuracy of this technology is better than most junior doctors, and that's at this stage. So who knows how that could evolve further. But I think as we keep hearing about these things, it just gives us a little bit of a taste of what the future might be if we're 10 or 15 years out. And you've got, okay, well, you can take a shot of an eye and you can get that information. What else can you get when you take that? You take a whole lot of other data, whether it's from wearables and other things. But you've got to imagine you put that together appropriately. Then I would like to imagine that we're gonna be capturing things much sooner probably than what has been done traditionally, whether that's cancers or what it is. And we've heard about things that will pick up certain changes that might be related to COVID, for instance. So
I think AI is definitely the key to unlock a lot of these amazing things you can do with big data analytics. I think one of the things we have to be cautious of when it comes to AI is and all this data that we're providing to AI is who owns that and what are they using it for. And I think one of the things that we try and do is get the education out there around how AI works, what kind of data it's gathering, how you interact with it, so that people are aware of what they're handing over and why it's important to own that yourself. And I think the more use cases like this that come out, the more important it is to get that message out there that you need to be aware of this technology and how it works.
Do you think that the blockchain is essential for providing, or capturing this sort of data as we move forward, and that there's obviously sort of things that tie in with the blockchain in terms of being able to potentially control who has access to the data and so on. But then on the flip side, there's a cost, and there's usually a higher cost involved for putting something on the blockchain, compared to a traditional database, right?
Yeah, blockchain's an interesting tool, an interesting piece of technology that has some really cool functionality that can be used for a lot of things. And when you're building out a service, you want to look at the tools that are available. When you're building out a piece of functionality or trying to solve a problem, you want to look at the tools that are available out there. And blockchains tick a lot of boxes if you're really interested in transparency and redundancy and decentralization, so that not one person is a grandmaster of control over something. And if those things are important to you, then blockchains are a great way of solving those challenges. And I think for AI, I think a lot of those things are quite important. I wouldn't be going and storing big, petabyte deep learning models on chain, because that would cost more money than the world has, and it's probably not appropriate for doing something like that. But fractionalizing ownership and control and governance over something like that's really important. That's handling people's medical records is something that blockchains can be really useful for.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of data leaks and data breaches, and it's now down to who do you trust with your data, and probably the answer to that is nobody in a general sense. And so I was someone was signing up for an online service today, and I was chatting through with them. I was saying, it's asking for your birth date there. You might want to just make something up and store that in your password manager, rather than giving them the real birth date. You want to be cautious where that stuff goes. Realistically, probably we're already beyond that point. If anybody wants to get anybody's birth date, it's probably already been leaked umpteen times now. But just generally speaking, we've learned that it's a real challenge, that privacy aspect. So I am kind of very curious to see how we sort of move forward from here, and how right do we get everything that happens on the blockchain? So I think so far things have been pretty consistent, but we do actually also hear the horror stories and the crypto exchanges that get hacked and so on. So it's not a world where everything's absolutely perfect either, is it? So
no, builders have got to build.
Challenging.
Yeah, there's challenges around building these things with any technology, and builders have got to figure those challenges out. The way that the thing that I suggest to anybody building in this space is be transparent about what you're doing with the community. There's millions of engineers and scientists out there solving these problems. Crowdsource that information, which this sort of open source space allows us to do.
Yeah. Now, also, when it comes to the world of crypto and Web3, we had news last week about GD1 or global from day one, which is a venture capital firm based here in Auckland, but they picked up attention globally for launching their dedicated fund that is focused on Web3 and crypto. So I thought, it's just good to see New Zealand doing things that are really attracting global attention. Now, I'm sure there's probably a growing number of funds around the world. This news sort of came through as this being New Zealand's sort of first fund of this type. Now, before starting Altered State Machine, you were working with Centrality, which I'm guessing Centrality is also a shareholder in ASM. I haven't gone through the company records to have a big breakdown, but you've got a connection there. But Centrality also, funds a lot of these projects, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a fund.
yeah.
I think so. It's kind of split out into two funds now. And Aaron McDonald's probably the guy to talk to this. But
Yeah, we must catch up with Aaron again at some stage.
I definitely agree. It was always a good talk. But I think there's about 60 portfolio companies that have come out of the sort of incubation and sort of venture studio project under Centrality. A lot of really awesome Kiwi innovation that's come out of that process. I think they've been around 6 or 7 years now, funding these kinds of projects.
And pretty big numbers of investment if we sort of stack it up. I know this is sort of a $5 million fund, but I think Centrality is and the investment that's already gone in this world from a Kiwi perspective is it's pretty significant to date.
Yeah, and I think New Zealand's starting to be seen as a leader in this space worldwide, and that's the feedback I talk with. A lot of companies in the industry and also other investors in this industry, and traditional investment sort of industry, Silicon Valley kind of traditional stuff.
Yep.
And New Zealand's pop is definitely on everybody's radar for a lot of the projects that are coming out in the Web3 space.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's pretty encouraging to see what's happened, here in New Zealand to date. And although if we look at, say, the NFTs and the non-fungible sort of token world, that's I guess as volatile as kind of anything that involves cryptocurrency. So it can be all over the place, sort of numbers wise. But we've seen some pretty big numbers there in terms of I'm not sure the market cap term usually gets associated with NFTs, but but looking at some of the numbers with the work with non-fungible labs and what you guys have been doing, certainly at times well into the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of a market cap, if that's a thing that you can apply to NFTs.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't apply that metric because it is a bit of a paradigm shift for content creation and community participation. And I think the industry is going to get better at describing as it goes along. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of people trying things out in this space, and we're seeing some really cool stuff pop up, and people building some really awesome stuff. But I don't think I've worked in an industry where I as a CEO of a company are so close to the community that's using what we're building. And often they're building it right alongside us, which is a really interesting kind of paradigm shift.
Yeah, it does seem to be moving very, very fast. So, look, I think there being multiple channels through which people can launch these startups in this space has got to be good. But there seems to be a lot of collaboration at the moment. I'm not seeing like that people are off necessarily just doing their own thing and kind of disappearing into a back room, but it does seem like there's a lot of wisdom around collaborating, and a lot of people crossing over and working together. Is that so your view on how things are going to date?
Yeah, definitely. So this is the thing. This is the big, powerful thing about open source building, is that it is a collaborative process at its core, and you can stack innovation on top of innovation, like no other industry can. And we've got the sort of Ultrastate machine, non-fungible labs, centrality, silo kind of ecosystem. We're all collaborating together and innovating, but we're also working externally with other projects. Like, wow, you've got a really cool asset and you're building some really cool technology. Would it be cool if we can, do this? It could be even the same assets that we're building. There's opportunities like, okay, those things can exist in the same world and interact with each other in interesting ways. Or, I've solved this really complex technical problem with the smart contracts on the blockchain. You guys should have a look at that and adopt it for yours, because it's more secure and your community is going to be better protected. So those sorts of things, is the thing I love about this open metaverse space, for want of a better word. Where that collaboration is at the core of what we're doing.
Yep. Oh, it's really exciting. Well, we'll probably have to tap in with Vignesh Kumar at some stage from GD1 and hear a little bit more around what they've got planned and what's going on. But look, I think it's really good, and it's I guess it's at times it's a little bit scary when I look in and see how volatile some of these things are. But for what you're doing with Altered State Machine, you seem to be well funded. You've got what size is your team now working on?
I think we're getting up around the 50 mark at the moment. So that covers obviously engineering, engineering and science and research, all the way through to design and creative, and then community and marketing and strategy and those other departments. Very technology heavy company, as you would expect when you're talking about AI. And we're growing. We're still in a growth phase where we're hiring pretty much as fast as the pipelines allow us to hire. Mostly New Zealand based, because we have a fantastic talent pool here in New Zealand of some of the smartest people in the world, in my opinion. And we're kind of proving that now, which is awesome. But we do have offshore staff members as well, based out of the US, Australia, and design resources that come from different places as well. So
that's pretty exciting, because how long have you been going with ASM?
Officially incorporation date, a little over a year now. I started building the prototype, this specific version of the prototype that we based Ultrastate machine off, probably a couple years, 2.5 years ago, maybe. It's hard to track time in the age of COVID. But sure. That's my guess. So it's been only officially having our doors open for a year. It's been a pretty big year.
Yeah. And so to break this down a little bit for people, as a company that's working in the world of NFTs, artificial intelligence, how do you fund what you do? Because a headcount of 50 people, that's and I'm picking that these are folks that aren't quite at very near the minimum wage level.
No,
you've got some real talent in there, right?
Yep.
So reasonably expensive. So how does that work out from a funding perspective? And selling NFTs. What does that bring in, and how does that all fit together, sort of financially wise? Because you seem like you've got a fair runway ahead.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. First of all, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been as sort of saying earlier, we've been in the space for about 6 or 7 years. So, and we've incubated a few projects. I think 60, around about 60 in total through that process,
which is a phenomenal number in and of itself. Especially you're looking at each thing, and it's not usually just a tiny project, right?
No, and yeah, it is a massive undertaking founding a company, and I, from personal experience, my hat goes off to anybody who attempts it. It's I haven't met a founder that hasn't put their heart and soul into what they've built. So it's a difficult process, and I personally have been involved in probably a good dozen of those companies, helping out in various ways. Aaron has obviously been involved in all of them. And when we founded Ultrastate Machine, we initially funded it with our own money because we believed in the project, and got it to the point where we could go out to the market and show people, hey, this is what we've built and this is what we're doing. Do you want to be on the journey with us? And the first initial small round of funding was what's called a SAFT round, which is a simple. Do you have that?
I did have that here, didn't I? Hold on. Bear with me. We forget these terms.
Yeah.
So
many acronyms in this space.
Simple agreement for future tokens.
Right. Simple agreement for future tokens. Yeah, thank you. Which was a SAFT round, and so we sold a small amount of the tokens to the early contributors. So we had people like Delphi Digital, who are massive in the space internationally, Polygon, Animoca Brands, led by a place called Shisha Finance, and a number of other really high quality investors in the early round who could bring in community and support and different tools to add value to what we were building. So that's, I think it's really important when you're looking for investors. Sometimes it's easier just to take money because it's there. But what you want to do is you want to find people who can really add value to what you're building. So for us, number one was community and support around that. Number two was what Delphi's provided, who are really are industry experts in the economics side of blockchain, and we consulted very closely with them on how we've rolled things out. And so we brought those people on board early, built out the platform more, had some revenue coming in the door to a point where we're self-sustaining. And then we looked at what our growth plans were long-term, went through a seed funding round, which was a bit more of a traditional funding round from the crypto sort of native ways. It was a hybrid round where we got on partners who could bring content to what we were building primarily. So we partnered with TCG, who have their LPs at likes of Disney and other people who have access to a lot of content.
Okay, interesting.
Warner Music Group, which kind of speaks for itself, and other organizations that are capable of bringing content and also community and strategy to what we're building. So that's gotten us a pretty healthy runway to build what we need to build. And then across the whole ecosystem, we've got a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and it's going to be really interesting. So the next kind of quarter, what the people are going to start seeing coming out of the ecosystem as a whole.
Yep. And so at the moment, if people are kind of curious, what can they go online and find about Ultrastate Machine? Because you've got NFTs, they can go to OpenSea and see things there. What do you want to walk us through
Yeah.
a little bit, sort of what folks are able to see today, and then a little bit of what that future actually looks like?
Yeah, so we have first place is obviously our website, so you can go through the sort of very high level overview of what we're building. If you want to dive
That's
real deep,
alteredstatemachine.xyz.
that's the one. Yep.
Yeah. Why XYZ?
It's because you'll notice that a lot of the companies in the ecosystem use the .xyz, so we can be consistent across the board. So Centrality used the .ai, which was all the rage back in the day.
Back in the day, it's not that long ago.
crypto years and like dog years, man. it's a lifetime ago.
And these .eth type domains.
ENS domains, they're good. So yes, obviously the website, the white paper, if you really want to dive into sort of the original vision of where we're going, you can find that on the website. And then obviously OpenSea to see the assets that we're producing. So one of the really important things for us was we're building something that's quite technically complex, but we want to be able to tell a story about the technology that we're building, because that's how you get engagement and you make it an immersive experience. We could just put a command line interface up there and that could be the whole internet, right? But nobody's going to engage with a command line interface for very long. That's why the internet's become this rich kind of experience, multimedia experience that people interact with. And that's how we want to have people interact with AI. So our assets, the brains that hold the memories, the AI memories, they're actually a fun asset to interact with. They're a piece of 3D art that can pop into little characters and make them do things like play soccer games and that sort of stuff. And it's a real sort of rich experience that people can interact with. And then the little characters themselves are fun little 3D characters that that people can interact with for our first sort of demonstration of how the protocol works. So I think you got to tell a good story, get people engaged, and build out a world that's interesting and immersive. And I think that's what the future of this open metaverse that everybody likes to talk about is.
And like looking at one of the things you've got is the ASM how do you pronounce it, AIFA All Stars. Your how do you describe these virtual football characters? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so one of the first prototypes, actually, the prototype that I built out to start Ultrastate Machine was this little soccer game where these little AIs played soccer against each other autonomously, and you could tweak some stuff in the background like a football manager to get them to behave and learn in different ways and create interesting strategies as a team.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, that's a great demo, like that should be a game in itself. So at some point that became our first sort of demonstration of how to use the protocol and the platform and the tools. And that kind of, through the interaction with our community, that took on a life of its own, where they're like, actually, we really want to play this game. That's a thing on its own. And so we put the team and the resources behind it to build it out into a proper experience that people can interact with and have some real utility out of the box for what we're building, which is awesome. And that led us to being contacted by the likes of Authentic Brands Group, who are the custodians of the Muhammad Ali IP. They spent time in our community, seen how we interact with them, and reached out about collaborating with us on a Muhammad Ali boxing game.
Wow.
Which is really awesome. I mean, to have that opportunity It was beyond my dreams of what we're going to get exposed to at the time. And we've worked closely with them designing the experience and talking about how we're going to treat the legacy and the brand of Muhammad Ali in this open metaverse space. And we're just starting now to roll out some of the first teasers of what's going to come in the future with that Muhammad Ali boxing game, which we're calling the Next Legends, which is an awesome experience. And that led to a number of other really big franchises and brands approaching us to come and collab on some interesting stuff. So got a lot coming in the future, but it all started with this silly little soccer game.
Yeah, wow. The characters are really cool. But I'm kind of curious. I've talked to different people around NFTs, and you get quite a range of opinions. I'm kind of curious what you think are the because I guess they often sort of get referred to as, oh, this is kind of like your modern day baseball card and so on. Some people are trying to break it down into something traditional, right? And as I often say, like, the what new things technology brings, you can't necessarily break it down and describe it in terms from yesteryear, because it is something completely different. It's like, when the internet came along, you try and describe it like, oh yeah, that gives you an encyclopedia in your pocket or something when you have the internet and a smartphone.
Yeah.
But none of these descriptions really completely cover them, and you've got to actually experience these things to understand it. And I think we're kind of coming into that with the world of non-fungible tokens and blockchain. Is we're still in quite this early state. Yes, there's a lot of people are sort of investing or throwing money in, sort of hoping they're going to 100x whatever they they put in and so on. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective in terms of what do you see as the hallmarks of those sort of NFT projects that are going to have success longer term?
Yeah, that is a tough question to ask someone. It's kind of let me gaze into my crystal ball. But
well, I mean, if
but
you
I
look
do,
at the moment, right, you can see certain things of those projects that go well. And you talked about your partnership there with Muhammad Ali Foundation.
So through a Authentic Brands Group.
Yeah. And so you notice things that do really well, and then you notice other things that they may do well for a little bit of time, and then they sort of they fizzle out.
Crystal ball aside, I do have a strong opinion on this. So I think there's a couple of approaches companies take to NFT projects, and I'll try and remain sort of neutral in describing these. There is the sort of the financial gain approach, where they think they can produce something, make enough noise about it to get enough people to buy into it, and that's the purpose of the NFT. And we see quite a few of those out there. There's the cultural and artistic approach, where I've actually got a message to put out there to the world, and I'm interested to see what their opinion is. There's some really cool projects out there that are doing that, and they're centered around the artistic value of the work that they're producing.
Yep.
And then there's the utility, that's I'm building something really cool that happens to NFTs happen to be the right solution to solve this problem I've got for what I'm building. And those kinds of projects are usually thinking a little bit further down the road about what the future is going to be in this new immersive space that we're moving into. And I've worked with and talk to a lot of projects in this space, and some of them are doing such awesome stuff, and some of the artwork out there is really cool. And art is very subjective, and it's not everybody's flavor, but I've got NFTs that are, not super popular, but I love them because it's a cool little thing that kind of just, tugged at my heartstrings or something.
Yeah.
And
but
then,
it might be worth 10 grand, right? Which is really hard for some people to get their head around.
yeah, mostly they're worth not anything,
Yeah.
but some projects are building culture around what they're doing. So you look at like Bored Apes, and some of the other larger projects. Their mission is to build, culture and community around something, which is an important thing, and people do find value in that. So that's why they've attracted people for those reasons. We're focusing obviously really heavily on the technology side of what we're doing, but we're not forgetting the artistic side. Our little, cute little 3D models are technically complex because they're fully rigged and 3D and animated interactive, as opposed to most NFTs, which are just, sort of JPEGs, pictures of things. And you can completely customize them yourself. So you can, choose different hats and put on different eyes, or, octopus arms, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's an interactive thing. And we wanted to push the technology as far as we could. And every time we release something, we want to push the technology as far as we could beyond that sort of initial JPEG idea.
Yeah.
To see how we can express our art and creativity through this medium.
Yeah, and I guess in New Zealand we have that incredible sort of mix of talent from both the the creative aspects that's made so many great movies come out of New Zealand, and more and more games and so on. We've got that side with the technical talent, and that seems to be quite a key as far as the world of NFTs is concerned, to be able to cover from those perspectives, but also tapping into partnerships like you've talked about seems to be really key. There's this whole aspect of popularity, like anything, right? So if you can get that attention and do something that serves a particular community or audience, that certainly helps to build the traction, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's an amplifier for what you're doing as well. I think we have you're right. We have a strong legacy of this sort of technology creative side in New Zealand, with the likes of Weta and Peter Jackson and all the stuff that's come out of New Zealand. It's amazing. And, getting in the ecosystem, Fluff World's working with Weta Workshop on projects, which is amazing, getting to work alongside true Kiwi legends. These are our heroes. I remember growing up, watching the rise of all of this through Lord of the Rings and everything in New Zealand, and these people really blazed a trail for the rest of us.
Yeah, definitely. And you also talked about utility, the sort of the usefulness of these of NFTs, and I guess to me it seems as though in the longer term it's NFTs that are going to add some value in some way over a longer term, where you would expect there to be a maybe the most value, but I struggle to get my head around when I look on, say, OpenSea and what people pay for different NFTs, to get my head around the picture at all. But then you see what people pay for all sorts of art, right? And people pay a lot more than what it physically costs to produce, say, a sculpture or a painting and so on. And I think as society we've kind of got our head around that, but I'm not sure that in the NFT world it's all the dots are joined up for everyone yet, but that utility piece, I think, if you've got this whole other element of benefit that a NFT can provide, that's pretty interesting to me. But I guess we haven't seen too much of that utility yet, right?
No, and people are sort of just starting to catch on. I think to your point earlier, it is difficult to describe what it is in sort of Web 2 terms, like traditional terms that people are used to, because it is a different thing altogether. I've heard it described as, a receipt or a position in a queue or all these other sorts of attempting to describe it, and it's not quite what it is. And it's not until you interact with it that you sort of get a sense for what the difference is from what you've traditionally interacted with. And if you look at a JPEG, essentially it's a piece of code, right? And when you look at it that way, all programs and everything you do online and everything you interact within the digital space is code. So if you're writing a piece of code, whether you're creating a JPEG or writing an AI, and being able to have a native way to trade, prove ownership, and prove uniqueness of a piece of digital code is important to what you're building, then NFTs are probably a great choice. And that's the way that people have got to start thinking about when they're building things, not like, I want to put a JPEG out there and make money. That's I think that's the wrong angle to look at it.
Yeah. Now, we did have a couple of other topics we were going to delve into today. I saw the announcement come through. Apple, Google, and Microsoft collaborating on a passwordless future for us all, which sounds pretty good, actually. I was on a radio station this morning. They asked me to have a word to their audience about cybersecurity. What is it that people need to do, and the aspect of how we look after and maintain and keep our passwords unique, password managers, multi-factor authentication. That sort of at the core at this point of addressing so many cybersecurity issues that tend to come back to people's accounts getting compromised because maybe they didn't have multi-factor authentication in place, or they used a really stupid password, or it's a password that has already been compromised in the past and is floating around out there in the public. And I know we've seen some of this effort in the past to go passwordless. I've got an old Hotmail account which I set up onto passwordless, I don't know, year or so back, and it makes makes a fair bit of sense to be going down that track from this perspective of actually bringing down our cybersecurity risks. What are your thoughts, and do you think this stuff can apply into will be able to apply ultimately into because behind the scenes there's there I guess effectively is a password, a token, and so on, but you just don't see it. So would you see this applying in the future in the blockchain world as well?
Yeah, it's the lifelong cat and mouse game. That age-old cat and mouse game of people trying to build things and then people looking for ways to exploit those things.
Yeah.
And the I think the digital and online world has amplified that in a massive way. I remember back when I was a kid, we used to get scam calls on the phone. A little rotary phone. And that was, that's how you got scammed back then. Somebody would call you and get your bank details or credit card number or whatever it was. And then the evolution of that scam has just evolved into the crypto space, where the exact same scam's being run today, where people are just going and fishing for personal information to steal money from them. So Um, and I think passwords are a big attack vector for these sorts of things. And I'm interested to see how the big tech companies are looking to solve that problem, and whether those hackers are going to find a way around it real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's been the work from the FIDO Alliance has sort of been going on over over a period of years, and we can now get these FIDO 2 tokens to be able to log in, and often using biometrics. And with a token or logging in through a device we've got that maybe is sits behind some biometric type protection, or device pins and so on. But yeah, how that plays out. So it's going to be an interesting time ahead. But for those that have managed to make this leap into passwordless, which I think will grow now. Now we're getting Apple, Google, and Microsoft really pushing this, and it'll take some time. I think it's pretty exciting. So hopefully we can squash down some of these cyber issues.
Start winning,
that we see. Fortunately, so much of what we see today in terms of cyber security issues, there's a good chunk of it that is really common and has been around for a while. So, a mix of education and just everybody sort of slowly nudging forward, we start reducing that those risks. But we still see the news reports and so on of whether it's celebrities or whoever, well-known people with accounts that are regularly being attacked that haven't done the absolute basics. So it's a little bit sad in those regards that we're still trying to communicate those simple things. Another thing that came up was this story about DJI, and when we look at drones, I mean, DJI they've been so successful, such a runaway success. I know we were talking earlier. You were telling me about drones that you've built in the past, and one to take a line out for fishing and so on. I think it is one of the areas where technology has facilitated a lot of innovation. And when we look at the situation in Ukraine, we've spoken about it a fair bit over the last couple of months, how technology and especially drones have been actually quite key along the way to some of the successes for Ukraine in terms of defending themselves from the Russians. But the story around DJI was they've got this technology for drone tracking called aeroscope signals, and these were supposed to be all encrypted, and DJI had insisted, their people had insisted on at least a couple of occasions that no, it's all encrypted, it's all safe, and then it was found out that actually that wasn't the case. So there's the potential there for Russians to actually be able to track down exact locations of where Ukrainians may have been standing as they flew their drone. So tracking the user of the drone and the drone itself. Now the concept is pretty good when you're not in a war situation. If someone's flying a drone somewhere where they shouldn't, a big stadium, and there's something dodgy attached to the drone, then it's good to know that these things are going on. But in a war situation, doesn't sound too good.
No, that's that's a good reason to seriously look into open source and transparent systems, in my opinion. Open source and transparent doesn't mean transparent to the data, but does mean transparent to the architecture, that people can verify that what companies are saying is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think this is a massive problem with tech, is that nobody can go and verify that these companies are doing what they say, and they're making real life and death decisions based on the things that they're saying, and it's not verifiable. So I think that's a massive case for people encouraging the companies that they interact with to be open and transparent about what they're building. It's a scary prospect.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty hard to get these things spot on, because you've got a whole lot of different audiences that use technology and a whole lot of different use cases. I saw a note on one of the reports about that I read that said that was suggesting that the US may have formally mandated that these remote ID broadcasters needed to remain unencrypted. So there's all these sort of different needs and desires and different parties, but we sort of expect to be able to trust particularly a big player like DJI to get it right. But if we actually step back a little bit and we look at the big tech companies, they don't get stuff right 100% of the time, right? So it's pretty hard, and open source, not everything's sort of 100% perfect all the time either. And then lastly, the other stuff that caught my attention the last few days was there was a little bit of coverage around broadband in two countries. One, Australia, with their national broadband network, and we see their sort of promise from Labor, if they get into government at the upcoming election there, that they would, for Australians who are within the sort of the fixed line footprint, that 90% of those would get gigabit fiber access. I couldn't find anywhere where that breaks that down to how that actually compares with New Zealand. I mean, we know for New Zealand we're getting, and we're not far off it now. 87% of the entire population are getting fiber access to premises. So doesn't sound like they're going that far. And of course they're despite starting before New Zealand, they're still playing catch up and having burned tens of billions. But I think that must be encouraging for some. And I know a lot of Kiwis live in Australia, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then the other thing on the broadband front was reporting around the US, where Biden's talking about making access to internet for those that maybe can't afford it today much more accessible. So a US $30 credit per month for a lot of people. And some of the things I've been reading suggest there that it could be heading towards 40% of households in the United States qualifying, which is a huge number. I would have thought, if we sort of just were to look at New Zealand and you would look at those that don't have broadband at the moment, it'd be a lot less than 40% of the population.
Oh yeah.
And probably the case in the US as well. But I can see that being really transformative, and it is a genuine challenge today, that digital divide of folks that would struggle to afford it. And by the sounds of it, reading about some of the internet providers that have come on board that $30 credit would be enough for them to deliver, high-speed broadband into homes. That may mean some of them changing their plans. So Verizon made a comment that they'd bring down their $40 plan to $30, and therefore, homes would be getting it for free. Which sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I guess the question had to be asked: at what point is access to the internet a basic human necessity, right? Alongside, food, water, shelter, healthcare, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is so important, and of course we can cope without it a bit longer than we can cope without water and so on. But and some of us probably wish that its access wasn't as widespread as what it is. Today I used to enjoy jumping on a plane to San Francisco or Los Angeles. It's like, bit of downtime, think, read,
Yep.
it's just like there's those days have sort of largely gone. Of course, there is still that aspect of sort of discipline and turning our devices off and getting disconnected, but it's swinging more in that direction than there being so many places where we don't have the internet.
I remember my last flight from, I think it was from San Francisco to New Zealand.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, at what point can I get away? Can I no longer get away with saying, "Oh, my plane doesn't have Wi-Fi,"
Yeah.
and people believe me on those flights until my wife starts messaging next to me and blows my cover.
Yeah. We're in I think interesting times, but it's good to see that governments are looking at these aspects probably more and more, same way that they're looking at social media, looking at the harm technology can provide, which I think we're starting to have a really increased awareness of, as well as the exciting opportunities, and hopefully we more often than not get that balance right. I think technology creates an incredible opportunity to give a lift to our country, to our economy, to New Zealand's people, and not just New Zealand. This is a global thing. So it's exciting to read that there's more being done to get these balances right and move it forward.
Agreed.
Cool. Well, it's been great to catch up with you, David. Thanks for coming on the show. Now, where should people look if they're wanting to get their head around a little bit more about ASM and altered state machine? Is that back to the website?
Yeah. So head on over to the website or our Twitter account and jump into our Discord. I don't recommend anybody go and buy NFTs without jumping in and talking to the community, finding out what's going on, what they're actually building, what the community's like, whether you identify with their values. I highly recommend don't go and buy our NFTs until you jump in our Discord and our Twitter and see what we're about. I'm on there a lot, and I love answering questions about this thing I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, Discord seems to be the big thing, and Twitter as well seems to be reasonably active as far as the world of NFTs and blockchain type things as well, right?
Yeah. Those are the two hotspots for sure.
Yeah, good. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for that. And thanks everyone for listening in and for joining us on NZ Tech Podcast this week. We will be back again with you more than likely similar time next week. All right.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, David.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.